I'll let you know when. Yes.
Now
Yeah.
this meeting is being recorded. Welcome everyone. It's Tutti speaking. I'm really glad to see such a high number of people, despite the holiday season still being going on in parts of Europe. Here in the north, I think most of us have been back to work for a number of weeks already, but others are still enjoying their time off. Today we're looking into the newly established structures of implementing our strategy, which was confirmed in the assembly, as you know, 6 months before. So the board has not been idle. We have had a task force that has been looking into the strategy implementation and reviewing the different structures that we've had in place across our community. We've made some renewals, and I'll just briefly present what the future structure will look like, and then I believe it's either Lars or Valerie looking into the structures in more detail. In the invitation for this information session, you received the sort of the headline structure that we've created. So we basically function in three tiers, if you wish to call it. We have a structure where in the future we will have 3 so-called permanent committees, and they look familiar to you. So what we will have is the so-called Leadership Exchange Committee, which has functioned for a few years under the name of Leadership Exchange Forum. And this is, as the name says, it's a group for the EBU members' leadership to exchange their thoughts on their role and on the sort of strategic role of EBU. Then what we have had for a long time is our prestigious LC committee on EU advocacy. And now after really long discussions within the board, also discussions with the newly elected chair, Francesca, we have decided to rename the group to be Advocacy Committee. So we no longer attach the Advocacy Committee's work only to the European Union, even though for obvious reasons the large emphasis of the work will continue to focus on advocacy towards the European Union. But we will sort of expand to other structures on a geographically broader area. The first steps are taken towards the Council of Europe and the OSCE, the security organization that has a history of advocating for the political rights of persons with disabilities. And the third permanent committee that we are establishing as a new structure is the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee. That will be smaller from the 2 previous ones. So the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee will be comprised of a smaller number of experts on these topics. And the function of the committee is primarily to look into EBU structures and ways of working to ensure diversity, equity and inclusion in our own operations, but then of course also addressing any advocacy related to these themes together with the advocacy committee. And this will be presented in more detail in a little while. So these are the sort of permanent committees that we envisage to be long-lasting and sort of bridging over multiple strategy periods. The second tier in the structure are the thematic working groups, where the current groups that we've had in EBU's operations are sort of regrouped under new, slightly broader areas. And these thematic working groups have a lifespan of this strategic period, so until the next assembly, when we will establish the next strategy and then also review these thematic areas that we work on and focus on. These groups are meant for thematic experts, so they can be both paid staff members of our member organizations, but also any blind and partially sighted persons who are experts in these given fields. I'm aware that some of our current working groups and networks have had thematic experts that are sort of external experts on these topics, and my understanding is that they can still take part in the work of the thematic working groups in the future as well. Each of these thematic working groups will have a chairperson leading the work for the strategic period, and that chairperson is meant to be either blind or partially sighted, but the thematic experts can also be sighted people if that is the case. So the main purpose is to provide a platform where we can exchange and develop thematic expertise on given fields and thematic areas, and also to produce and support content of the advocacy work that the advocacy committee is putting forward in their endeavors. The new themes or headings for these groups are a group on training, another one on mobility, a third one on accessibility, a fourth one on digitalization, and the fifth on Braille literacy. And as you hear, some of these might also come quite close to each other or have parts where the work is overlapping, but this is something we will figure out while we go. Then there is another sort of a different kind of nature working group, which is the external communication working group, where the participation is limited to the communication staff of or the people who are responsible for communications in our member organizations. And the purpose of this external communication working group is to coordinate, for example, different campaigns. I think a good example is the Braille 200 anniversary campaign next year. So this kind of initiatives can be coordinated through the external communication working group. And the third tier of the new structure are the different fora or forums, which are quite close to the networks that we've had so far. So these are meant to be open platforms for exchanging and discussing matters related to living as a blind or partially sighted person. And as a difference to the other structures, these are open also for those blind and partially sighted Europeans who have not got a link to a member organization. So we are visioning that there might be, for example, women or young people who are visually impaired in Europe who are not members in any of EBU member organizations, but perhaps could find access to our movement through these networks and forums. So the different forums that we're setting up are one on women and gender issues, one on low vision, one on youth, and one on older persons. And each of these groups will then also have a coordinator picked from among these forums, and the coordinators will be taking part in the work of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee, so that we ensure that the knowledge and expertise that is created in the forums is actually linked to the decision making and sort of the other permanent structures of EBU. Then we're also creating a membership exchange forum, which is open for blind and partially sighted people across Europe to exchange any interesting questions or discuss any matters that they have on their mind, sort of to allow an interactive space for blind and partially sighted people across Europe. I think that's briefly the new structures. As you probably notice, it is related to what we've had in the past, but we've tried to sort of formalize things and also bring them to sort of equal positions in the community. But I think that's all on my part for now, I think we will welcome some questions, and hopefully either myself or Lars and Valerie are able to provide some answers before launching into the more detailed presentation of the different structures. But Lars, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Titi. Happy to indeed open, first of all, now a round of questions on what has been presented by Titi in terms of the overview, and then I'll take it a little bit further into going through the terms of reference. But I can already let you know Titi has been very concise and clear in what she said, so it takes already a good amount of what otherwise I would have also said. So that makes my intervention shorter, which is good. But first of all, questions on what you already heard at this stage. I
Yes.
don't hear.
I have a question.
Sorry, Dick and Peter. I think Dick, maybe Peter, you can take over. Yeah, Dick just lowered his hand. Okay.
So was there a question? Sorry, I couldn't get that.
Peter, do you want to go ahead?
First of all, I heard first of all, thank you very much for this meeting. That's first of all. Let's start positive. Thank you very much. My question first is the relation with the LC. How can I see that? Because that's not clear for me. That's one question. And what is the reason for this structure change? What is the reason? I would like to have some of the details about it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I've noted that. I'll respond to that in a second. I'm just checking if there are other questions.
Yes, there is another question by Jesper, please.
Yes, that's me. It's the relationship between the accessibility working group and the digitalization working group is, when you talk about accessibility, is it mostly concerned with transportation and the built environment, while digitalization is digital solutions, or is there a crossover between the two working groups in terms of sharing various tasks and areas? What is the thought behind it?
Thanks, Jesper. It's also noted here. I'll try to provide, hopefully, convincing answers in a second.
There's another question by Dick.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, something more specific. We have the old LC committee, and it covers all subjects, and it covers the subjects also from the beginning to the end. But now I see a structure, and my question is, does that mean that somewhere the work of the LC committee ends and will be taken over by the other committees? The communication committee, for instance. And on the other hand, I see a new group for inclusion. Is that something that the LC committee doesn't cover anymore? So is it limiting the work of the LC, or is it just expanding the work of the LC? That is my question.
Okay, thank you. One other question, if there is, otherwise it gets too much and I will forget the answers, actually. But one question, if there's one.
I have Simon.
Yes, thank you. My question would be about the training working group. Is this about the training of within our organizations, or is it about advocacy for inclusion in the education system?
Okay, yeah, clear question. Okay. If you allow me, Valerie, please take note of those who still wanted to come in, but I'll start with a few answers. Otherwise, I think we're, as I said, I will forget what the answers are, what even the questions were initially, and please help me with the points that I may miss here.
Okay.
So, and Titi, of course, as well. It goes also back to your presentation, so please jump in. But I'll give it a start. So. On some questions around the LC or the former LC and the change now to the advocacy committee. So first of all, the aim here is to have one body in EBU that looks at our positioning when it comes to advocacy work without making the distinction between whether it's targeting the European Union or other countries, so to speak. So it's actually enlarging, if you'd like. I think that was your word that you were using as well, Dick, the scope and the mandate of the former LC, now AC, or Advocacy Committee, to not get lost in acronyms here, and on a geographical basis. And that's, I think, very, very important because, and this is the whole idea, is of course there are different strategies, whether you target the European Union or the Council of Europe or other bodies. So the targets can vary, but the actual content of our position in advocacy, what we want to achieve, should be the same, and it's EBU wide. Doesn't matter whether we are targeting the EU or other bodies. So I think that's the number one. That's why this change from the former LC now to the Advocacy Committee occurred. It goes without saying that most of the thematic working groups, and I'll come to that in a second, of course, there will be connections to what the Advocacy Committee is doing, because advocacy is not done for the sake of advocacy. So, of course, on content, on a thematic basis, in many, at least, instances. So there will be exchange between these structures. It's not going to just happen in isolation. The specific question, I think it was from you, Simon, from Switzerland, if I remember well, is about the training working group.
Yes, that's right.
This is meant, the name could have been different, but let's not fight for good names now, and let's stick with what we have. What is meant is more the second part of your question, so the advocacy in the educational and also rehabilitation, employment and training field. It becomes clearer when you also will read, not today during this meeting, but after this meeting, the various terms of references in more detail. It says that this is meant, it's not training in-house, so to speak.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. The other thing I wanted also to say, there was a bit of a question about the let's say, overall rationale behind these structural changes. Now, one, I think, has been mentioned by Titi at least, which is that we want the implementation structure to actually be connected much closer than it was in the past to the actual strategic plan that the General Assembly adopted. So that's where at least the thematic working groups are clearly based on the content of the strategic plan. And that connection was always in the past a bit there, but quite implicitly there. And we want to make this more explicit, so that helps our own understanding internally, but also helps it actually to communicate this, what we're doing and why we are doing things externally. The other reason I would also maybe state here is that we thought also the permanent, so-called permanent committees, they should work very closely, let's say, or report to the board, if you want to put it in hierarchical language. And this is really important, that there's a direct connection. This has always existed for the former LC, which had a sort of a privileged position actually to access to the board, but also to report to the board and be, well, in some cases supervised by the board. And we want the Leadership Exchange Committee, but also the new diversity, we call it now Diversity Committee for the sake of simple language, to have the similar, well, privilege, but a similar standing because of the importance of the three committees. They should actually be put at an equal level, if you'd like, with access to the board, but also the need, of course, to be accountable towards the board, so that this is really close to the decision-making of EBU. So that's what I have noted down in terms of answers to the questions, but I may have certainly missed points, in which case I invite both Valerie and Titi to complete what I've just said.
Lars, it's Jesper speaking. It's just you forgot to address my question about the borderline drawing between the accessibility group and digitalization. Sorry.
Yeah. So no, this is thank you for the reminder. When we're looking at the different structures, this is something that has been discussed, no surprise, because some of them, and this is a typical example, are connected. Now, the reason why it ended up being two instead of one was that we had at some point actually a group that was called accessibility or access, I don't remember. And then we tried to list a little bit what access or accessibility meant. And we ended up with, this means everything. Well, a group that means everything and should tackle everything is not a very operational group as such. That's where then this, let's say, dividing came into the place, that one digitalization could look more at indeed the IT, if you'd like, component of accessibility, which are critical for blind and partially sighted people. But this would also include areas such as artificial intelligence and its challenges or prospects for accessibility. So this could go in the more digitalization working group. And then there would be so many other accessibility still needs and requirements in the more physical space that could be dealt with in the, let's say, accessibility group. And I should say this right away here, because I'm sure, Peter, you will come with a question at some point anyway. This other accessibility group could also look at questions of access to sports and leisure activities. So there we go. So I've covered that already without being asked.
Thank you.
If Titi can add a little. So as these thematic groups are quite broad, we were thinking that they can also sort of set up time-bound task forces underneath. So for example, the LC has had a task force on accessible payment terminals. So what we envision is that this accessible payment terminal group could in the future sort of live underneath the accessibility working group. So not everybody needs to discuss everything, but to sort of create a structure where we actually know how to reach these different groups and where, for example, the advocacy committee can reach out when they need content information and expertise on a given topic. So, but I think I'm quite sure that this will require some trial and error once we have these structures in place. It is a new thing and it requires practice before we get it running smoothly. But I'm hoping that this will create equal access to information and also equal access to the board and to the EBU decision making and advocacy agenda as well.
We have
one question.
Questions again from. Just a second, just to let you know, we have one question again from Dick and from Jesper.
And from me.
And from who's
Peter.
Peter. Okay, thank you. Please kindly raise your hand so that we can identify who wants to ask questions. Thank you.
May I ask my question now?
Yes, yes, you may.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm just curious in how you divide the work has been done through the LC into the two different permanent committees. What I understand now in the explanation is that, for instance, payment terminals will be covered in the new group. So it would be nice to know exactly which subjects are part of the LC work and which subjects are part of the new group. Just to be clear about who is covering what.
Before we answer, Jesper and then Peter, can you ask your questions, please?
Yes, it's Jesper speaking. It's a bit along the same lines, because what will be, I mean, for instance, I think it would be good to have some relationship between the accessibility and the digitalization group, for instance, on the group level. Excuse me. And on the other hand, I can see the reasoning behind having an advocacy group, but for an advocacy committee, which is then being expanded from the current LC. But I would imagine that for this to work, they do need inputs not only from the board and for the members of the advocacy committee, but also from the various working groups, in order to formulate and act on various aspects of advocacy that needs to be undertaken. Or how is this going to be built, so we ensure that we actually have a structure that talks together when needed and can act together?
Okay, last question, Peter.
My question is in the same line, a little bit higher question in that sense. I asked before, what is then the clear function of the LC? I would like to know a little bit more about it. So we have every year an LC, and every 4 years, let's say, in General Assembly. The board is now on some subjects more in the lead. That's what I understand. But the LC has his own engine who is going on. So I would like to know how that will be organized. Then back to the committees or forums, doesn't matter for me. Who will lead that, and how does the information exchange then? And who will finally, in the LC, how will that work then if we say yes or no? Or can the board then change that again or something like that? So that's not clear for me. Thank you.
Okay, I can again give it a start. Sorry, that was my mic. So I can give it again a start. I can try, and then please, Titi and Valerie come in. I'll try to clarify. So I think for the now AC Advocacy Committee, in terms of the content work or the thematic expertise, I mean, in the past already in the LC, there was thematic members. There was also thematic expertise member of the group. So these were not just advocacy experts who know how to conduct advocacy and lobbying campaigns or something sort of politically, but these were already, if you look at the already mentioned payment terminal task force, this was a very much thematic orientated task group under the former LC. So this is still absolutely possible. Of course, it depends a little bit, and that's a more generic answer now. Depends a little bit, and this is too early today to know, also on who will be nominated to which group, which I know we'll come to that in quite a while, what the nomination process is, how to really populate these different structures that exist currently or more on paper. and how we may fill them with life and people, most importantly. And it will depend on also a bit on that, of course. And we can expect that there will be, in any case, different double, if not triple membership in some cases that also help to ensure the connections are made. The role of the board in this was also mentioned. I don't think, and please, Titi, as the board's chair, the EBU's president, of course, you will ably correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the intention of the board is here to be a bit more, let's say, I don't know, to get involve itself more in directly in the advocacy work. The advocacy work is taking place under the leadership of the advocacy committee. That is the main body of advocacy for EBU in that sense. But of course, the role of the board is exactly to make sure that the different structures talk to each other and function together. So there is a coordination role also that the board has to and will certainly play. So it's not a matter of interfering or kind of trying to steer everything content-wise. I think there will be good latitude for all of these structures and committees to function and in their area of expertise. But it's clear that sometimes also in the past, different structures worked a bit in silos, I think is fair to say, without being actually connected with each other. And I think that is the idea, one of the ideas to change this. So that's all from my side for this round of questions. Again, please, Titi, come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking about the advocacy committee as that it is the same LC that continues, but the scope is broader. So whereas previously we have, or the LC has contributed to EU processes and made sure that our voice is heard in the EU, it will now focus on other structures when they become sort of when there is something current going on in other structures. And I think earlier, at least having discussed with Antoine Faube, who is in charge of the campaigning and advocacy work in the EBU office, I understand that in some specific thematic areas, it has been difficult to scavenge the thematic expertise through the LC. So he might have asked for contribution on a topic XYZ, but the LC members have not been the correct people, or they've had to go further in their structures to find that information. So what we're trying to create here with this new structure of thematic groups is to create a resource also for the advocacy committee, that when there are thematic areas that the advocacy committee members are not experts on, they have a resource to go back to ask that, okay, now the EU is asking for our contribution on this topic. Can you please provide content expertise on this? But I think how we will ensure that the communication flows, I think we'll need to first see who are populating all of these bodies. As we know the nomination process for the LC was in the spring, and we would expect the advocacy committee to be more or less those people who are nominated for the LC in the spring. And we expect that many of these people will also take part in the thematic working group. So that already probably solves part of it. What we have had a struggle with is that we've had a youth network and we've had a women's network that have been, especially the women's network has been very active, but the link and access to the board has been rather thin. So now creating this diversity, equity, inclusion committee, where the coordinators of these new forums will be seated, we are hoping to actually hear more from the young people, from the older persons, from those with low vision, and from the women in our community, also on the level of decision making in the board, so that we actually know what are the conversations, what are the challenges that EBU is having, for example, in terms of engaging with young people. in our community. We don't know unless we have a structure where the information sort of reaches us. So this is what we're trying to enable, but we're not trying to strip the LC of power or of any resources. But with the advocacy being the focus, now we're sort of expanding the scope beyond the European Union, and then hopefully providing more resources in terms of technical content and expertise.
Thank you, Titi. If I may add something, the advocacy committee is also the interface with the outside world, so to speak. And it's informed, there is a porosity with all the structures. It's just that the advocacy committee has perhaps the skills and the opportunity to bring these questions and actions outside. So, but that doesn't mean it's totally in isolation, just the opposite. We are interconnected. All the structures are working towards the same aim, to implement the strategic plan. Maybe there's one last question by Dick, I think, but after that, perhaps we need to move on to the next item.
Yeah, well, thank you. Once again, what I do not understand clearly is what the third permanent committee is doing. Is it now taking away from the LC some subjects to take into account, or is it something else? Can you make it more clear what the third permanent committee is doing? Is it parallel on the LC some parts of the work, or is it, how is the relation?
What third committee are you referring to?
The permanent committee for inclusion and so on.
Diversity.
It was, yes, and diversity. It was mentioned that, for instance, payment terminals could be brought to this permanent committee. That means that the LC, the LC from today goes away from that subject. I was just curious how the subjects are divided.
If I may correct, so the payment terminal group will be under the thematic working group on accessibility. So the diversity and inclusion committee is bringing together the expertise on diversity and inclusion, on gender matters, on youth matters, and ensuring that European Blind Union as an organization takes into account the diversity of our community, so that we have diversity when it comes to decision makers, but also that we are creating structures that enable a diverse group of, or a diverse body of blind and partially sighted Europeans to take part in the work of our community. So it's primarily not an advocacy body at all. The primary focus of the diversity, equity, and inclusion group is to focus on ensuring inclusion and inclusivity of the European Blind Union and our operations.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps we can move to the next item.
Yes.
Lars, did you have anything else to say, perhaps about the terms of reference, or do you want me to take over?
I'll give you the floor in just about a few seconds or minutes. I wanted to specify, I think 2 points should suffice actually here, because otherwise we're getting a bit lost in details. On the one hand, I wanted to say that for the different terms of reference, that all of these structures we've just been alluding to or explaining in some, let's say, nature, all of this will be shared after this meeting with you. Not only the recording of this meeting, but all of them have terms of reference which are written down documents. So you will be able to read all of that. And I think, and I'm sure this will actually make some of it also clearer, and will help, and then that's the key point here, I think, will help also to identify internally within your own organizations who are the best people to nominate, to put forward to the different structures, because that, of course, will be coming in the coming days and weeks to decide for you who you want to send, so to speak, to the different structures, working groups, and committees, and so on. So that was one thing. So, and that will save us also now to go through, of course, actual reading the TORs, which is not exactly what the purpose here is. It's more, of course, an information session and interactive session. So I think the questions that have been raised by you help actually more to understand some of it than now me reading through the TORs. The one thing I wanted to clarify also is about going back to the advocacy committee. Now, we had already a nominations process over the springtime for what was at that time still called LC. So most of you and your organizations already went through this and nominated people for the current 4-year term. Now, when looking at the nominations for all the other structures, we are not expecting you to reconsider your own nominations for the now advocacy committee, with the exception of those, especially outside the European Union, whose role and status have now been clarified and actually, if you'd like, empowered or improved, and who now feel maybe this is more relevant than just being an observer. So, of course, in that case, you can nominate new people for the now advocacy committee. But other than that, we will take it that the nominations for the LC over spring will be also the advocacy committee for the 4 years to come. That's important when we come to the nominations process to be clear about that. And I think with that, so that we do not get lost into too many details, I would actually leave it now, hand it over to Valerie, who will go more into the actual nominations process, how to nominate people, by when, and so on. I think that is what we are also waiting for. Yeah, Valerie, unless there's an urgent burning question in the meanwhile, then of course I'll hand it over straight to you.
Thank you, Lars. So it's every 4 years, around every 4 years, we ask all EBU members to nominate participants to the different structures that are all operated via e-discussion lists. These discussion lists, as you know, allow us to communicate with each other, sending one email that everybody belonging to the structure can read and reply to if they wish. So this is the technical structure behind the operational structures. And on early next week, we will send an extensive email to all EBU members. So I hope you're all receiving, since you're here, you should be all receiving the messages going through all EBU members. On this message, you will have the recap of the tripartite structures, the committees, the working groups, the forums. So this will be all explained. You can click on links to download the terms of reference for each structure, knowing that, for instance, all committees don't have the same terms of reference. So this is a very important point that I would insist on, to really take the time to read each terms of reference to understand the specificity of each structure. And the nomination for each structure. So for instance, the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee, if you are the person in your organization who is responsible to send the nomination, then you should be aware that, for instance, it's only one person per organization who is nominated, because at the end of the selection process, of the nomination process, only 15 members will be selected from these nominations by the board, along with other participants to this committee, which will also be invited by the board. For instance, as Titi mentioned, the leaders of the forums. So for each structure, there is a specific process. I cannot go, this will be too boring. I cannot go to all of them now, but it's important to understand that each structure has a different process. For the advocacy committee, as Lars said, no need to rename or re-elect or re-choose the chair, for instance, because it's Francesca Sbianchi who was chosen by the board upon a nomination by the Italian members. On the working groups, so we have up to, let's say, 5 person. Sorry, I'm just, someone wants to join. So on the working groups, apart from the external communication working group, which is a little bit specific, but the working groups are open to all EBU members with the ability to delegate experts and invite external experts if needed. So we have up to 5 members per, up to 5 participants per member organizations. The chair is elected by and within the working group. And I'm not going to go into details now about the selection process of the chairs within working groups, because that will be once the working groups are complete. Then we can go through, for instance, an electronic vote. But that's not the immediate issue. The main thing for members to know now is that next week they will have access to a Google form to nominate participants to each structure. The Permanent External Communication Working Group is only meant for experts within your organization. So, for instance, communication officers, and it will be coordinated by EBU external communication officer. But there will be a chair also. Again, I invite you to read the terms of reference. For the forums, the eligibility, as Titi mentioned, is quite open. There is no threshold, apart from perhaps some age consideration. For instance, the youth forum should be meant for persons under 35, and the older people forum for people over 60. It doesn't mean that if you don't fall into that age limit, you cannot join. It means that, for instance, if you are the person who is going to convey the messages to and fro, and you have a special interest or expertise in that section of the population, you're of course welcome to join the forums. And it is the membership of the forum is 2 parts. They will be nominated on the through the Google form by members, but they will also be, as it was before, suggested by existing member, invited quite freely, with still some moderation if we notice that something's wrong. And there will be again in the terms of reference reference to etiquette, a kind of code of conduct, which will also be developed later on. Again, for the forums, the leader will be elected internally, so it's not the board that decides, but members of the forums. So again, early next week, an email will be sent to all EBU members with a link to a Google form. If you have any questions when you receive this email, please write to me at membership@euroblind.org. Also knowing that to complement this email, there will be a web page available on the EBU website with a sum up of what has been said today, also downloadable documents, and a link to the recording of this session. So I hope this all helps filling in the nomination form. And if you have any questions now, you're very welcome to ask them. Yes, Dick?
Yeah, my question is, this number of 15, is it also the case in the LC as we have it? Is
No.
the limitation of the members of the LC also 15?
No, not at all. It's only for the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Agatha?
I have a question, if possible. Peter.
Yes, Agatha first, please. If you need to unmute, Agatha, your microphone.
I started.
Okay. Agatha? Yes? No?
Yes, yes.
Oh, hello, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hello.
We can hear you now. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for helping me with the microphone.
You're welcome.
I would like to ask a question about the process. So we have to complete in which permanent committee and in which working group would you like to participate, and our organization to nominate a person? And the second question, is there the possibility for a country to select in more than one group? For example, if I participate in the group for women and a young colleague from me, from Greece, to participate in the youth working group.
Of course, this is a very important question. Thank you for asking. We really wish everyone to be involved as much as possible in as many structures as possible, depending on the terms of reference of the structures, of course. But yes, I mean, the forums are as was said before, are widely open. So any member at grassroots level in your organization is welcome to join. Anyone you know could be interested in these topical areas is welcome to join. For the working groups, the more the merrier. But also, it's not about numbers; it's about commitment. So, if your organization nominates participants to such and such structure, please be aware that it's not just to put a name in a mailing list or to have a title. It's really to get involved, and in a kind of win-win situation where you get from it, you report back to your organization if needed. And so it needs to be a very quite interactive process. But of course, the more the merrier, and it's very important that you get you participate in several groups if you are able to get committed in those groups. Yes. Does that answer your question, Agatha?
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dick, Peter wanted to say something?
Yes, I will do it very slowly. Still 3 questions. Okay. First of all, do I understand very well that the LC basically stays the same function? But the organization itself, what I now understand by your good explanation, I understand the necessity of that. Thank you. but the LC itself will function as normally as it does before. Is that correct or not correct?
Yes, in some way. It's just broadening its scope, and it's more inclusive of non-EU countries in a way. I guess that's the main change. Also, it changed its name, so we're not gonna call it the LC anymore, but the AC, Advocacy Committee.
Okay. Okay. That's my question too. That's my question too.
No. I know that this is quite tricky at first, but the terms that have been chosen and selected are meaningful in a way. They aim to be more proficient. So it's a bit of a reflex to acquire, but yes. So now we're talking about the Advocacy Committee. And if you I mean, you may notice that before it was the Commission for liaising with the EU. So of course the change of name is significant. It's not just a change of name. So the scope is broader. The function is the same.
Okay, thank you. Very clear answer. Thank you very much. So if I understand well, in Warsaw we have our first AC meeting.
Exactly, yes. and this is also, I take this opportunity to answer a question by Lindsay Cole from the RNIB. I'm very aware that you sent me an email on these topics, and I was hoping you would be part of this meeting today. So yes, the former LC meeting is now the AC meeting.
Okay, the first one. Let's make a party of that. Good. Second question, to be very clear, can you also, because next week we receive a mail from you, can you explain as much as possible the relationships between the LC and the forum and the fixed committee, let's say the three basic committees, which I understand now are more to, if I understand well, from your explanation, the three basic or fixed committees will support the board in general point of view more, and will also assist the EC. Is that correct understanding?
I'm not sure I understand your question completely.
My question is, I will make it a simple question. I think the three fixed or three permanent committees are more in a general point of view. They will continually going on because the issues which are mentioned will going on. So it is not really a committee. It is more a kind of supporting something to the EBU itself.
Yes, the committees, we also call them standing committees or permanent committees, and indeed they are ongoing. The Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee, as Titi said, is about an organization's support, yes, and
so I think it is better. I think it is better not to call them committees because that looks like the same as the other committees. So I think give another name.
There was a long work and brainstorming sessions and discussions about names. Nothing is perfect, and probably as we go along, we might fine tune. But for now, it's been decided that collectively that it would be, we would have three committees. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's clear. Then we have can you then explain in the mail which you will send the relationship between the EC and the committees which are temporary for example, 4 years, that we understand the structure, how it works. Separate, I understand the procedure, who will be the boss or not, that is not important. That's not my question. It's more that how you know the information will flow. If it is possible that you send some information about that too in that letter.
Okay, I won't go too much into details, and we can have further discussion on this fine tune on these specificities. But again, the advocacy committee is the interface with bodies like the EC, It doesn't mean that it works on its own, far from it. It is informed by other structures. But I'm not a specialist in its working, so I won't go too much into details. We can
no
perhaps
problem.
have a...
Try to explain something more in the letter which we will send, and it is more understandable if you read it. The third question that was mentioned in a previous mail or in the board meeting, there are also places in the EDF, for example. Who will go in there? Who will do that kind of work? The connections with the EDF, for example, we will do that. Where will that be organized?
This is not yet. The alliances with other organizations such as EDF is not something we are tackling now, but it will come later on.
That will come later.
Part of,
Thank you.
it's part of the strategic plan, but it's not yet formalized.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have to take the next question.
Thompson has a short question.
Yes, Håkon. There were two questions before. Mina first, and Agatha, and then Håkon. Mina, if you want to ask your question.
Valerie?
Yes, who's speaking?
It's Nacho from the EBU office. Can I intervene after Hakan's intervention? Just to
yes, so you will be the fourth to intervene. Yes. Yeah. So Mina, please.
Hello, everybody. This is Minna from Finland. I think this is a very interesting structure. I've been following this discussion, and I have one question. How is it organized, the communication between the working groups and committee and the board? Or are there any interest areas or something for the board members that is it somehow shared that who will be connected or following the work of different areas? Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand, but you mean how the dialogue between the different structures will take place? Is that
actually I think that how will the information from these working groups and committees go to the board? Is there somebody responsible in the board who is kind of following this work, or how? Yeah. Because maybe this is an area that is very important, I think, because committees and working groups are making so much work, and which can help the board.
Yeah. I mean, the board will be informed. That's also part of the terms of reference, that the reason why there will be coordinators and chairs in all the structures is also to encourage communication with the board and also communication from the board to these structures. So this has been thought of thoroughly as one of the two-way communication channels, having chairs and coordinators, but also the cross-membership, the cross-participation. As Titi mentioned, one person can be in several structures, can be member or participant in several structures, and therefore have the information flow through this way. But there are several ways the information can flow. One of them is also the members' exchange forum, a more sort of immediate way to communicate between members without having to go through discussion lists or mailing lists. So there are several ways. We hope this new structure will enable a more flowing communication process.
Thank you. My question was actually that how are the board members involved in this new structure? That is, if I say it.
Can I add?
Yes, Titi.
Okay, so the formerly the LC chair has taken part in board meetings. Now in the future, the advocacy committee chair, so Francesca, and the future chair of the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, they both will take part in the board meetings. And my understanding is that Lars is going to continue as the Leadership Exchange Committee's chair, so he is obviously going to be there as well. The different forum coordinators, so the women, youth, low vision, and older persons. Those coordinators are involved in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So that is the way their contributions fed to the chair of that committee and to the board. And then with the thematic working groups, we are envisioning that the information would flow at least partially through the advocacy committee, because they will obviously exchange information. Now, as Valerie was saying, there might be, for example, a particular board member might be also the person who is representing their organization in the advocacy committee, but the same person might also be taking part in a specific thematic working group. So that will also enable exchange. So far, we haven't discussed that the board members would be sort of having a good parent role or a sponsor role or a special focus person role in the thematic working groups. But I think it's a good idea. And if we struggle with communication, it's definitely something that we can look into, because I think I can already now know that we have specific board members who have keen interest on some of the thematic working groups. So that is a good idea. But currently, the idea is that the committee chairs are all present in the board meetings, and the different structures will communicate with the committees.
Okay, thank you.
The next person who raised their hand was Agatha.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to ask about the advocacy committee, if it will be linked in other organizations except from European Union, such as Council of Europe and OECD, in order to the positions of EBU to be spread in these organizations. For instance, the Council of Europe has a permanent subcommittee for persons with disabilities. So we can proceed, and I think it would be a good idea to proceed the dialogue between the advocacy committee of EBU with the permanent subcommittee of persons with disabilities of Council of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Agatha. The short answer is yes. And the longer answer is it's already underway. So yes, this is totally part of the aim to liaise with other structures such as the Council of Europe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Håkan.
Yes, this is Håkan Thomson from Sweden. Next week, we will get terms of references and are able to go through them and so on. And it will take some time for all organizations to go through them and discuss who will be the best representative. So my question is, when do you need these nominations? Which is the latest date to nominate?
We decided upon the end of September, so that's roughly 1 month. The reason why we need to start really having the nominations ready by the end of September, more precisely the 26th of September, is because this preparation work has taken a while, but the term is getting shorter, and we really need to set things in motion. So yes, it will be the 26th of September. Does that seem reasonable to you, Håkan?
Yes, we will try, of course. That's important to start to work, of course. But yeah, it's also important to find the right persons.
Yes, of course.
Yes, but thank you. 26th of September. Okay.
But this will be again in the email that we are going to send early next week. The deadline will be included. Who was next? I think Nacho, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Valerie, for giving me the floor. It was just to share, if it's okay with you, a little reflection on the external communications working group. Because at the beginning, it was said that the original purpose was to use that forum also as a platform to coordinate campaigns and raise awareness about the main challenges and opportunities for blind and partially sighted people across Europe. I mean, it's my perspective, but I think that that working group is also a good forum to exchange knowledge between members in terms of, for example, what are the most suitable social media networks for a certain organization, depending, of course, on the type of audience that organization wants to reach. Also, I think that it can be a very good forum to exchange some inputs in terms of accessibility, because Valerie, as we have already discussed in the office sometimes in the past, with digitalization, social media platforms and websites and other tools that organizations might use to promote their work are also under the scope of accessibility. And I think that it's also good to know the main insights in the area of accessibility, whether we talk about social media, websites, and creating content overall, because there are always issues regarding the font size, color contrast, and so on. And also, and of course, here I'm speaking from my experience as EBU external comms officer. I think that it's also a good forum for other organizations. As you know, Valerie, here at EBU, we've been developing a database of institutional contacts that we use to disseminate our work at a European level. So I think that maybe if there's if among our members, if there's anybody who would like to reach any organization outside their country, whether it's a European organization or I don't know, this comes to my mind. But for the artificial intelligence topic, which came at the beginning of the session, at EBU, we produced a podcast last year about this topic, and we got to talk to somebody from the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness who gave us a contact. So I think that overall, I think that the external comms group is also a good forum. Of course, this also applies for the other ones as well. But I think that it's a very good forum to exchange contacts and also kind of develop the networking of all organizations when it comes to implementing the strategies. Well, that's all that I wanted to share with you, Valerie. Thank you.
Okay, and with the rest of the participants here, thank you, Nacho. The mission of each structure will be defined when the structure is operational, when everyone is registered. And I take this opportunity to also announce, but it will be, of course, announced later on in the year, that in October there will be an info session for all the chairs and coordinators of the committees, groups, and forums to also define the roles of everyone and the operations in a more precise manner. So yeah, as you pointed out, Nacho, this is a permanent external communication working group, and its which means its missions are partly related to the strategic plan, but also to it's a standing working group, if you wish. So with other expert issues, and this is why we're asking member organizations, if possible, to nominate communication experts within their structure, within their organization. But yes, when it comes to the detail of the missions, I think that's it's at a later date, if you wish.
Yes, thank you very much, Valerie.
Thank you. Polona, you wanted to say something?
Yes, hello, thank you. It's Polona from Slovenia.
Hello,
I
Polona.
just have, I would like to share maybe my reservation or second thought about working groups. I miss, for instance, as a current leader of low vision activities at EBU, I have to say that I miss a working group for low vision because I believe that there are several issues and work that has been done and could be continued at that level. Because I believe, maybe I'm mistaken, but I believe that work at forum level is one thing, but then like a specific working group is another thing, and also maybe for other areas, but there are some, I think, other persons who can talk about, for instance, women, older and youth forums or specific groups. So I would like maybe further explanation on why there are only 6 thematic working groups and not like 4 more. I mean, I believe that then maybe we would have too many groups, but still, you know, because as I said, working group is one level and then forums are another. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Polona. Yes, indeed, this is a very important point. As Lars mentioned, we talk more in this case of a task force, perhaps, that can be operated under a wider working group. Working groups are wide groups because from experience in the past, if the working group was too narrow, it was just ineffective and very dormant. So we try to gather the sort of logical areas of work under 6 working groups, but this is bound to evolve if at some point that one is still dormant, or we feel the need that one very important working group is missing. This might evolve, and again, the terms may help us navigate together logically. And in this case, I would use the term task force, perhaps, for the old low vision working group, in the same way that accessible payment terminals task force will still be operating, or the something like in the past the disability card, which might still be going on. So we're not getting rid of the working groups or task forces, but just reassigning them to a logic structure. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Polona.
Well, thank you for your answer. Maybe it does. I don't know yet. I have to think about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Polona,
Yes?
it's Lars speaking. I'll add one aspect. I think this is not only important for your reflection, but I think this may also apply to other work structures and processes. We have in some of the cases, and low vision is one example, but not the only one. Of course, we are operating under the famous European Commission funding, which will end, at least it's last year, in 25, so next year. And this includes a certain number of commitments and deliverables that we promised as EBU, as if you like, collectively towards the European Commission. And the structure we're presenting here and putting in place for the next 4 years does not finish or stop these commitments that we have already made towards external funders such as the European Union. So in other words, to make it simpler, the work that is promised in the area of low vision and, or for example, I'm thinking here also of audio description in 25 that is already submitted to the European Commission for funding in 25 is not going to be finished or withdrawn because of the new structure we are setting up here. Just wanted to make this clear that this may hopefully also take away some fears.
Okay, Lars, thank you.
If I may add, Tutti here. I'm also thinking that in the past we've had some challenges identifying activity leaders for the European Union funded project work, and I think what we try to address here is that by taking part in these structures, so for example, thematic group, anybody is not automatically put in a possibility of responsibility to deliver content project work, but that we would have these structures that feed in the expertise, and then when we apply for funding, for project funding, those activities are then set up in a task force structure where we of course tap into the same resources, but we sort of have had situations where we've had a network on a thematic area and then a task force or a working group on the same area that is putting or doing the action that we report to the European Union. And I think what we're trying to avoid is to have parallel structures or to have thematic experts not taking part because of the fear that this brings additional work that they are accountable for. So I think especially now when we then apply for new funding, we have to be aware that we only promise to deliver what we can deliver, and that we actually identify the people who wish to take part in the activities before we promise and plan anything in a funding application.
Is that, have we answered your question, Polona?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I think there's one last question on this topic, and then we'll need to move on to the next agenda item by Agatha. Your hand is still raised? Or was it a mistake? Agatha, did you still want to ask a question? No? Okay. Katarina from DBSV?
Yeah. Hello. Just to resume a little bit before we go, I needed to resume on that. Is it clear that for the first group, I mean vacancy and other, we nominate one person? Yes, and it is selected by the board. For the working groups, it's up to 5 participants?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And for the forums, it is no limit or not?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, just this to
and
yeah,
and
be
just
sure.
to reassure you, this will also be explained in the form to fill in, so it will be repeated so that you know. But and it's also in the terms of reference that I encourage you to read.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Perhaps we can move on to the next agenda item, if that's okay, and I'll give the floor back to Lars.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would like to maybe, before moving on, to make one point that actually I forgot or that has not been really said very clearly. And I think it's today very nice because we're in good numbers, but also from different parts of Europe. to say that the, let's say, enlargement of the scope, at least, of the advocacy committee that was mentioned a number of times today, is also the response to the request that came repeatedly, especially from our friends in the Balkan countries, to set up maybe a parallel or different structure similar to the now advocacy committee, but for non-EU countries. So just wanted to make this very clear that the response to that is actually the enlargement of the advocacy committee to all countries, putting them on the same level, rather than creating yet another and a new parallel structure. I'm not sure, I don't think that requires probably more explanation or discussion today, but I wanted to make this quite explicit, because we know that there were attempts and also requests, and actually quite formal requests, before and after the General Assembly, to set up a new structure for non-EU countries. Now, we believe, the board, and I also clearly include myself there, we believe that with a reformed advocacy committee, this is not needed at this stage anymore. And of course, then practice will tell us how this works, but I think that is at least definitely the hope and the intention. With that in mind, I would just go to, well, if you'd like, the next point, which has already been at least referred to in what we've been saying so far. So you understood that the ball will be very soon in your court, so to speak, in terms of the members looking internally, who are the right people in terms of their expertise, in terms of their availability, the support they can receive, and so on. Who are the right people to be nominated for the different groups, committees, and fora. And just wanted to make this clear that this is really a key process for, on the one hand, because of course it's meant to go for this whole term, which now sounds maybe overwhelming to some, but in reality we're talking about roughly 3 years from the time we are nominating these structures. So it's on the one hand quite a long-term commitment we are all looking at, but at the same time it has also an end to it, if you like, and the end point will be the next General Assembly, to make that clearer. And I think this is also a good rhythm and a good practice that we're trying to establish here in general, that after a General Assembly, this is a point where things are renewed, or at least reconsidered, and sometimes maybe confirmed in some cases. That's also, of course, okay. But I think this is also gives also a manageable time frame for people to look at. So that, I think, is one part I wanted to say. So this nomination process is extremely important, of course. We need not only the right people with the right support level, availability, and expertise in the different structures, very clearly. And it's not only giving, and I may end on this note, it's not only giving time and energy and expertise away, because I know in some places and some organizations this may be seen a little bit like this. Well, we are now giving something to EBU or to the European level or to whatever, as if it was given externally, but it's actually not. Not only is it important that we act all together at the international / European level, because the impact is just extremely high, that I think people here, I'm preaching to the converted, but it also will allow those people who step forward in the different structures to actually exchange with peers from other countries, and at least to also have then an overview of what's happening in a similar thematic domain in other countries. And this, in any case, also the domestic work, so to speak, at the national level will always benefit from that as well. So I think we should a little bit, I'm not saying overcome, but get away a little bit from this. We are giving time away from our national work and devoting it generously to the European work, which I'm not saying was perceived all the time in the past like this, but there are instances where I got to hear that, and I think this is not actually the way it should be. It should be seen or constructed. This is a mutual work that we want to do to make the movement stronger. And this, of course, requires people to step forward and, of course, very skilled people to step forward. But it's not giving the time from one level to another and then meaning that you have less time back home. This is, I think, a bit not how we would like to see that moving forward. Now, and we will be here, that should be the last maybe point from my side for now. We are here from the Secretariat, from the EBU office, of course, to support not only to conduct this process and this meeting and in the coming weeks, the nominations and technical questions, that of course goes without saying, but of course also to support and help to facilitate and enable the actual work once the groups are populated and the committees, so that they can actually do the task they are assigned to do. So that's of course our commitment clearly here to support and to help with all of that in the coming years. So I'm not sure if there was more on this, which is not an agenda item, it was more a context, if you like, provider than an agenda item in itself. I think it's really to underline the importance of what we're all doing here and trying to achieve together. And it's for really a period of 3 years, basically. And I think it's the first time we're doing it, or we're trying to do it in a such, let's say, systematic way. I think this in the past, with all its pluses and minuses, by the way, has it often been done a bit differently. And we're really trying to set this up now in such a way that is also, let's say, sounds sometimes a bit formal and maybe over-formalized to some of you. But that this is actually a systematic way of doing it, as it is also quite a standard in many other places and organizations. So, and will make the work much easier for all of us, because we all then also know who are the roles and responsibilities for whom. And I think this is needed to clarify from the beginning of a new term. Now, that sounded all like a political speech now, and it was a bit of a political speech, but it's enough from my side on that point, and I hope this will actually help to get fantastic and numerous nominations over the next few weeks.
Before we go on to possible questions on this, and to rephrase what Lars has said in parts, we are very aware that members and participants to these structures are operating on a volunteer basis. And we are here at the office very happy to facilitate as much as we can. But the core of the content is also about empowering participants to own all the topics that are being worked on. And for this, I would really encourage organizations to make a conscious effort to nominate people in their organization who are committed, who are expert in some way, and also to support their capacity. For instance, let's say in a formalized way, let's say that at least grant them some time if they are paid employees of your organization, recognize that the work they might be doing for EBU means they need to set time for that purpose, or yes, so commitment, expertise, but also capacity from the organization is very important to enable members' engagement and fruitful overall operation. And that's something to think ahead before nominating. Are there any questions on this or reaction? Agatha, your hand is still raised. I'm not sure if it's a mistake or... Okay. Peter Bress, please.
Yeah, one last question, because you and Lars said it several times. Please be careful about nominations. What is your worrying about nominations? Where is your worrying point? Because you're giving constantly the advice from do a good selection, blah, blah, blah. So what is your worry?
The main concern is that there may be groups, working groups, or committees, or well, it's not so much with forums because the number allows for participation, but particularly in working groups, there may be groups where people register or are nominated and never interact, and that's a shame. And so, talking from experience, from the back office or the office, if you wish, this is a point that
Thank you for the explanation.
is a
It's
shame.
okay. No, it is clear. You never mention it. So
Sorry about this. Yeah, thank you for your question.
It makes it clear for the whole group. So what you want to say is, if you nominate, do be active. Otherwise, please do not nominate.
Yeah, in
Thank you.
substance, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Peter from the
Yeah.
Netherlands.
No, this is another Peter from Germany.
Oh, okay, sorry. I got confused. There were two Peter.
Yeah,
the same name, different person.
Yeah,
right.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say I've been actively participating in EBU activities for about roughly 30 years, and I must say it sounded at first a little bit bureaucratic, but I was looking at the renewed structure, and I think you've come up with quite a lot of good ideas to step into the future and future work. And I really wanted to emphasize that working for EBU, for our common course, is really not taking away time and effort from our local or national interests, because I mean it's mutually beneficial. We can always gain from this common work and take that back to our own organizations. So I really wanted to thank you for the effort, for the new initiatives taken.
Thank you, Peter. That's very kind of you. And thank you for all your hard work all those years. Thanks. Anyone else wants to say something or ask a question? Lars or Titi, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I can just say on my behalf that we've done our best so far. Now we'll see how things start rolling. I'm really hopeful. There's a lot of new energy in the community. I think we had a really wonderful time in Lisbon in the General Assembly, and we'll try to carry that energy over to this work now. So I'm really eagerly looking forward to the new structures starting their work. And we've been talking in the board that we are updating this to be EBU 2.0 in many ways, and I think this is part of that process. And I think it's really great to have all of you with a long history and long experience, and then all of the new energy, new people coming in as well. So I'm really thanking everybody already. I think it was a great number of people taking part in this meeting today, and thinking of all the organizations behind you. We are a really powerful and strong community. So thank you for your time already at this point.
Lars, did you want to, before I just say something about the next steps, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Titi summarized it very well. We're all looking forward to this now really happening. I mean, we've been working on this sort of, well, renewal of the organization in a structural way for, when did we actually start? Sort of mid last year or something like that. In reality, goes a long time back at different stages and levels and so on. And now we've reached another, I think, critical stage where it's really about having the people in the different committees and working structures. And yeah, we are very, very much hopeful, but also you never know who comes forward. So it's an exciting moment. So, and I think this is really good, but we'll certainly have a good working period. And I'm looking forward to the first working groups and committee meetings under this new structure. And also, and that's the last thing to say, at the first meeting of them, look into the prioritization. This has maybe not been said so clearly today. Of course, we know that in the strategic plan, there's still a wide range and long list in some cases of actions, possible actions and ideas. And of course, we are aware that this also needs to be narrowed down and prioritized in some areas. And this is what the different new working structures, once they have been starting, will do as the first thing, is to look into the next years and to prioritize in the different areas of their expertise, so that also the people who are and got nominated actually can help to set a little bit the agenda based on the strategic plan, which provides the frame, of course. But still also it's important that to give space for people to, of course, work on the various parts that they really have the expertise on. So please nominate yourself.
Thank you both.
Excuse me.
Yes?
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Ooh,
Hi, it's Birgitta Blokland from the Netherlands.
Hello, Birgitta.
As we know, the Women's Network and the Low Vision Network are the largest ones. And we had some new people joining us before and after the last General Assembly. And I wondered if those who have registered are still staying on, so as to avoid that everybody has to register anew, or is it the idea of the board that we have to inform the members of the forums to register all over again, as this doesn't go through the national organizations? That was one question.
Thanks, Birgitta. So the national organizations will nominate new members or members from for the forums, but of course the old members will be asked if they want to join. The members of the networks will be asked if they want to join the forum. So we will ask them for their authorization, of course, but there should be a continuation.
Can you explain again?
There will be a continuity in the membership, or if you want, a transfer of the membership of the networks such as the low vision and women's or youth networks to the forums of the same name. But of course, we will ask for their permission to do the transfer, because this is
by the national groups.
The national organizations can add members to those
they have
forums.
They have to approve the continuation then.
The national organization will nominate through the form, the Google form, will nominate participants to the forums, but the old participants of the forums will be contacted via the old discussion list to ask whether they want to also be part of the new forum.
Yes,
is that clear?
But
So
that will be then.
There are two entries to the forums: the national nominations and the older participants, if you want.
And on an individual level.
But sorry, what was that?
And on the individual level, as we have done so far. So
Yeah.
any blind or partially sighted woman in Europe who wishes to join the now called forum can do so through the same procedure as we have done up to now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, there was one question, and it's not a question, it's more of a flag up, or not so much a concern, but a reminder. And that's, I still have a little bit worry about the communication, the internal communication. And Mina, my colleague of the Women's Network, and I, as coordinator of the Low Vision Network, we have been working very closely together. And in previous working periods, previous boards have also thought long and hard and introduced new structures, some of which worked so well. But with the communication, as Mina said before, as Peter Brass have been around for almost 30 years as well. So having board, this is just a suggestion for the board to really not only the communication from board, within the board, if there are board members who are interested in particular areas, as Titi, as you said, are already there. Those leading these different groups to have a direct contact and speak to a board member who can then bring it into the board, for example, for us. And also the information between the different groups. When we still had commissions, they were called back. We had a separate communication group of all example to talk amongst themselves so that we.
Birgitta, you keep disappearing.
Yeah, sorry. It's the communication, unfortunately, is not very good, so we don't hear everything you're saying, Birgitta.
No, yeah, I'm with a mobile phone, and I'm in a rural area, so I have very poor connection. But the communication.
Yeah, the communication, that's the problem.
Support each other and avoid.
If what I
receiving
understand,
the information that comes.
Maybe Titi
central,
can answer
so
on.
I'm still worried about the communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to flag up to please think about ways and learning from good practice from the past, combining with great ideas for EBU 2.0 to ensure this communication, because that will make work and commitment so much higher, I believe, if that works well, the information and communication. Thank you.
Before Titi takes the floor, Birgitta, from what I understood of your concern, I think that in the task forces that worked on this new structure, the flow of communication has been high on the agenda. So you can also read the terms of reference in which this is all thoroughly explained. The way reports and the participation of board members in structures and also chairs and coordinators into committees and working groups. So perhaps Titi can answer more specifically on the board, the role of the board members.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to say that we have indeed discussed quite extensively about the communication and how we ensure that, and we've tried to create that structure and describe it in the terms of reference for each of the groups. But I'm also, I think the world is about trial and error, so we will try what we have designed, and then if it doesn't work, we're not going to wait for another 3 years and then review. But we will come back to this and of course update while we go. So if we now then notice next spring that we have difficulty in, for example, linking the thematic working groups and their sort of information from them to the board, or they somehow end up being satellites, we will then review. And I think the idea of having a board member to be participating in each one of these structures is a good example. But I think we'll first try what we have designed, and then if there are issues, I'm hoping that we can address. And please, I'm always here, so reach out to me also if there's any concerns, and we will pick them up on the way. So we will not wait until the next assembly to review structures, but we can mend things on the go if needed.
Very reassuring. Thank you, Tippy.
Okay. One last question or couple of questions, if anybody, or reactions, if anybody wants to react. No? In which case, I'm just going to go through a few steps, dates, in fact. On the, as said before several times, early next week, we will send an email recapping all the nomination process, and also with links where you can, through which you can download terms of reference for all these structures. The deadline for, sorry, in this call, there will also be a link to a Google form where which several questions you can fill in, and where you can, several fields where you can nominate participants which structure, and we will also on this Google form remind you of the numbers and all the useful detail for each category. The deadline for nominations is 26th of September, so roughly 1 month's time. Once this is completed, all the new structures will appear in your inbox, which means that you will receive messages saying that you are now part of such and such. And I'm not giving away the names, but for instance, just one, advocacy@list.euroblind.org. So it's the same pattern, if you want, in the addresses as the previous networks and commissions. Later on the 5th of October, we expect all the chairs and coordinators to be chosen either by the board or internally. And again, this will be explained at a later date because we don't want to confuse you at this stage. And on the 15th of October, this is a provisional date, it needs to be confirmed, but let's say around mid-October, there will be an info session with all the chairs and coordinators to fine-tune the role, the mission, and the practicalities. So this is roughly the next steps. And during all this process, you're of course welcome to reach out to the EBU office, board members, and ask for any clarification if needed. And I see Barbara wants to speak, so the floor is yours, Barbara.
Yes, thank you, Valerie. Thank you, everybody, first of all, for this constructive meeting. And I would like to send a big thanks to the three of them, in particular, Titi, Valerie, and Lars, because behind this meeting there is a lot of work, not only for the preparation, which, as Lars said, began almost 1 year ago, but also to put this in place with many meetings with the task force. And it's been very complicated, but we are eager to change into EBU 2.0, and I think that it will take time, but I'm pretty sure that if the General Assembly momentum continues, we will manage to do that. So when you receive this famous email early next week, I would like to highlight something. Since most of the work is going to be done by email, please don't be afraid of your English. If there's someone in your organization that is good enough, that has knowledge, that is great, but his or her English is not that good, take advantage of the translations to make it possible to participate. Because otherwise, we will be again struggling. This was one of the things why we had so many problems so many years ago because of the English. So I just wanted to encourage you to make sure that no matter the language, even though it's important and it's very good to have good English speakers, of course, since the work is going to be done by email, I think we can have tools that help us to have a strong community and committed community apart from the language. So it's been, for me, as personal point of view, it's been a great meeting, and I'm pretty sure that we will be celebrating this in initial part of the thing in 3 years' time, and it will be thanks to all of you. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks very much, Barbara. Thanks for your help also through this process. Anybody else would like to add anything before we conclude the meeting? Polona?
Yeah, hello. Once again, thank you everybody for this meeting as well. But just another off-the-topic thing, Valerie, I have just resend you an email because I'm not sure if you received my first one. Unfortunately, somebody, Titi, is using your name in a sort of phishing attack. So I would like just, to everybody, just be careful of this kind of stuff, because sometimes especially when we are partially sighted, we can miss some details and we can be a victim of this kind of attack. So be careful.
Thank you, Polona. I think Nacho sent an email to all EBU members to warn against this phishing attempt. And unfortunately, yes, it does.
Yes, correct, Valerie, because we received an email and I already spoke to Titi before I went on my summer break. We received a warning from Mateja, from our Croatian member, and I think that we also received another message from another member warning about this. We sent an email 2 weeks ago warning about this. So yeah, we'll keep working on this as well.
Okay, so Lars, do you want to close the meeting? Or? You're muted. You are muted.
Sorry, that was now. Can people hear me? Yeah, I think now that works. Sorry. Probably no need for long closure of the meeting. Thank you again for coming, for taking a lot of time. It was well, shortly over 2 hours actually, so that's quite long for all of us. I hope it helped to clarify a good amount of things. I'm not over ambitious to say everything, because I'm sure there will be questions that, as we already said, we're happy and here, of course, to help throughout the process, not just with this meeting. But for today, thank you again for taking so much of your own time and coming. And I'm sure we'll make this happen. And nothing more to add from me.
Titi, would you like to add anything else?
No, just a sincere thank you for everybody for attending. I'm really looking forward to working with you all together.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. I'm stopping the recording now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.